Christ. And I assume and believe that most all of you are. You know, in my years in Central, I've seen a lot of things happen, but I remember a little story I'd like to tell you this morning of a couple and I who went to visit a family that had come to our church. We had a habit when somebody visited, we'd come and we would visit them. And we went to this family to visit, and there were two little children, I guess 3, 4 years old, running around in the living room while we visited with them. And finally, we left and we went and got in the car, I and the other fellow and his wife. And the wife said to me, you know, when we were in there, the mother said, don't pick those kids up. And I said, why? She said, they bite. And she said, but I couldn't resist. They were so cute. And you know what? She was right. I've titled this morning's message, or whatever you call it, Weathering the Storm. And the first part of it I want to talk about a storm. David Jeremiah, if you are familiar with Dr. David Jeremiah's books, this one is called Hope, and I am trusting that this summer I will be teaching a class, or not teaching, what do we call it now? I can't think of the word, but it's not really, yeah, that's right, facilitating a class on this book, and it's an excellent book. I believe personally that David Jeremiah is one of the best Bible expositors of our day, and really I enjoy reading his books and doing the work with them. But he talks in his first chapter about storms. And when we talk about storms, of course, we think of natural storms, don't we? There's one in the Bible. You probably remember it. These pages are going to give me trouble, I can see it already. Let me read for you Mark 4, 35 to 41. And on the day when evening had come, he said to them, let us go over to the other side and leave the multitude. And they took him along just as he was in the boat. And the other boats were with him. And there arose a fierce gale of wind and waves that were breaking over the boat, so much that the boat was already filling up. And he himself was at the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they awoke him and said to him, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? And being aroused, he rebuked the wind and the sea, Hush, be still. And the wind died down, and it became perfectly calm. And he said to them, Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? And they became very much afraid, and said to one another, Who is this that even the wind and the sea obey him? Let's look at this for just a moment. First of all, we know that some of the disciples, at least, were fishermen. And they were familiar with the boats, with the sea, and all of that, and they knew what to do in storms. So this storm had to be a very severe storm, because apparently they were bailing the boat faster than they could bail it out. It was filling up. There was a real concern that the boat was going down. And we all know when that happens, what's going to happen. So they thought, what could we do? And they found Jesus asleep on the cushion, and they called him. He got up and he calmed the sea and the storm. But he said a couple of things to them. First of all, he said, don't you have any faith? Now, I got to tell you, in that situation, I'm not sure I would have it, because it looked bad, you see. Sometimes faith is difficult, isn't it? Sometimes it's hard. In any case, he said to them, don't you have faith? And they were afraid. They were taken aback because he was able to calm the storm immediately. And so they looked at him and said, "Who is this?" A lot of people today don't know who Jesus is, do they? They don't understand. Well, I don't know about you, but we all have some kind of storms in our lives. They're not the same as that. But it's a time when things happen that you never expected and never wanted to happen. I'd like to tell you about one I had many years ago now when I first got married. We celebrated our 61st wedding anniversary in September, so I've been married a little while. But anyway, I was just married about 6-8 months, I don't know, maybe a year. My wife was a nurse at the hospital. We had a little apartment right there by the hospital so she could walk to work. And she was working that night, and I didn't feel like sitting around alone. You know how that is, fellas, sometimes that happens. So I got in the car and I went down into Trenton. I parked the car. I got out of the car and I thought I was going to go get something, but I didn't know what I was doing really. That's very good. Thank you very much. So anyway, I start walking down the street. I come to the corner. My mind isn't really on what I'm doing. My wife tells me that happens a lot. Anyway, so I step out of the curb into the intersection there at State, and I think it was Warren Street. Car comes along and hits me, knocks me 50 feet, and I was out of it, you can imagine. When I woke up, I was in the hospital, and I was so sick, I didn't know what was going on. Nor did I care, I guess, much. Anyway, one of the nurses there realized my name and called up to my wife and said, "Do you know Walt Cottrell?" She came running down, and you can imagine how she felt when she looked and saw me on the table there. And when I got to where I could really understand what's going on, I had a broken, fractured leg that was actually out of the skin bone. And I had a broken pelvis. It was fractured but not dislocated. Thank the Lord for that. And I had a concussion. And later on, they also found a broken bone in my hand. So I was in the hospital for a while. What goes through your mind when something like that happens? Well, for me, it was, how am I going to go to work tomorrow? It's not going to happen, right? And who's going to pay for this, you know? Yeah, I had insurance, I mean, but you don't know really, Ed, when you're like that. I never used it before, I'm sure, because I was young and didn't worry about those things. And then thirdly, why is this happening, Lord? What's the matter now? Let me make it clear, I'm not sure. I was saved, I'm sure, when I was young, but I wasn't in the right position. I was in a Methodist church, but I wasn't in, I mean, religion was part of my life, but it wasn't my whole life. You got it? You know where I was at? All right. So, I come to the conclusion that there were things in my life I needed to change. Things in my life that I needed to change. Did you ever come to that conclusion in your life? You got things that you know you got to do something about. I'm going to talk about 3 different ones today very quickly so that we can get through them in the time I have. Okay, I hope so. We're pretty close to it anyway. So anyway, the 3 things are family, work, your job. That's what I'm afraid was going to happen. Family and work or your job, and your free time. Your free time. 3 things we can talk about for a few minutes this morning. The first part of family is, I guess you're all married. Anybody here that's not married yet? Okay, well, you can just take this for what it's worth. In a way, you may be in a good position because you can still choose a wife. Some of you guys may say, I wish I'd known what I know now. Others say, no, my wife is great, right? So is mine. My wife is great too. She was wonderful. I don't deserve her. But on the other hand, you know, as I say through the years, now my wife can't do anything much that she used to do, and I have to do it. So I am the chief cook, bottle washer, and all of that stuff. And it's a different experience. In the Bible it says, that which made from the beginning was made male and female. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and the twain shall be one flesh. Wherefore, what God hath put together, let no man put asunder. So there we are. That's what Jesus said about it. You're married. And he also said, the two are one. Once we're married, she and I are the same. We're together. She's the only one for you. You're the only one for her. I know today that there are a lot of people in this world that don't believe that. But that's what the Bible teaches. Now anyway, let's look at your wife for a few minutes. I want you to think back to some of the things that have gone on in your marriage and in your life, and ask yourself the question, I knew this was going to be good. How do you treat your wife? How do I treat my wife? And I would say, let's look at thank you so much. Great time. Yeah, appreciate it. He's going to be my right stick. Anyway, let me just go through 3 or 4 things and we're going to move on. Okay, you can hold it. Do you help your wife around the house? Do you know how to cook? I ran into a fella that his wife went in the hospital, and he wasn't sure even how to turn the stove on. He really didn't know. I mean, I'm telling you the truth. And I talked to this man, and I tried to counsel with him, but he just didn't know what to do. I don't know if he ever boiled water, to tell you the truth. But it's important for us to know some things about the home. And it's very important for us to make a relationship with our wives. Do you ever do the dishes? All right, you got a dishwasher, good. But sometimes it's a good idea to just step in and do a few things with your wife, especially if you have children at home, right? And thirdly, how about your spiritual experience with your wife? Do you talk with her about spiritual things? Do you pray with her? Do you read the Bible together? They're very important things that we need to think of about the wife. And so often, we get so busy that we don't take the time. I mean, I've been guilty of that so often in the past, I have to be honest with you. I've been guilty of it because when I was teaching, when I come home and I'm done with it, I'm done for the day. I don't have to do it. But that's not true. Especially when we have kids. What about the kids? How much time do you spend with your kids? When they're young, you can play with them. It's fun. When they get older, they get a little annoying. When they get really older, you wonder where they are. Part of the time, But we have a responsibility to our children. And we should start from an early age to do what we can to help our children to understand our faith, help our children to understand that you love them, but at the same time you have certain standards you want them to be involved with. I think that's so important. And too often, it's easier not to do it. I can give an example in my own life how this happened. My daughter, who was then in high school, enjoyed gymnastics. And what she wanted to do after supper every night was go down the cellar and tumble on the mats we had down there for her. And of course, you could do the spotter. Spotter. Well, the last thing I wanted to do at night was go down in the cellar and spot my daughter. I had other things in mind, mostly sleeping maybe, I don't know, but I was tired, how it is. But I went down there every night and I helped her with her gymnastics because that's what I had to do. And then do you sit down and read the Bible with them occasionally? Do you pray with them? What do you do with your children? So family is very important. And I think we need to rethink that. Maybe there's an area that God is putting on your heart right now that you need to make some changes in. That's up to you. You have to decide. God will help you, but you have to do that. I want to go on to the second area, and that's work, the job. Now, how about your job? Most people, they want to do well. They want to have they want to do their job the best they can. As Christians, we all should, right? But the problem is that sometimes you can't do enough during the 8-hour day, and you have to take it home. And if you do that, you have to be very careful. Because our responsibility is to be there for our wife and our children. And when we take that time for work, it causes problems. It affects the family. And many times I've run into people who have struggled because they never see their wife, their husband, or their father. Or if they see him, it's for a little while. So there's a responsibility about the job. Do the job to the very best you can in the time you have. But there are other people, there's guys I want to talk about you too. You love your job. When I had a job in the library there for 18 years, I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I liked to go to work. I enjoyed doing it. Fortunately, it wasn't a job I had to take home, but I loved it. But so many people love their job and they want to do it well, so they focus on it even when they're home. And that's a problem. We have to commit that to the Lord and ask the Lord to deal with it in our lives. If we spend so much time with our job that we're neglecting wife and children, there's a problem. And then I want to talk, thirdly, about your free time. We all have free time. Now, I have some free time sometimes. I like racing. I like to watch the NASCAR races on TV when I can. When I was younger, my older son-in-law was still alive. He died from cancer, by the way, but when he was alive, he was into it too, and he called me up and said, let's go down to Delaware and watch the races, and I'd go with him. Well, that was good, and I enjoyed it, but at the same time, at times I felt guilty about it because I spent so much time down there that I wasn't home with my wife, and sometimes the kids were there, I didn't go as often as he would like me to, and in the end, I watch it on TV when I can, but I try not to get it in the way of other things. It's so important that we think about our free time. We say we love the Lord and we're committed to Jesus, and we're going to do everything we can to show Him to the world by the way we live, and yet many of us have tickets to go to all of the ball games or something of that nature, or we have, I don't want to step on too many toes, or you have a box at the I can't think of the word I want. That's what happens when you get old. But anyway, you have a box there and you go there and watch the games in a real nice place. And I've heard a lot of Christians talking about these things, and that's all right. But if it gets in the way, you better talk to the Lord about it. And finally, and I know I had a lot of scripture here, but time's going and I don't want to waste a lot of your time. And you know the scriptures already. But I want to talk finally about your quiet time with the Lord. Your quiet time with the Lord. Well, how's it go? I know one guy that said, every morning I read my devotional booklet. Well, that's good. You read the Daily Bread or some other devotional, and maybe you say a prayer. What does it take? 6, 7, 8 minutes? Do you have time with the Lord, or are you just going through the motions? Maybe you're sincere, that's fine, but I would suggest, and this is me, my suggestion in this area, is that you need to spend 20 to 30 minutes with the Lord every day, and I recommend in the morning if that's impossible for you because you can't stay awake, okay? But think about it. In the morning is the best time. Spend 10, 20, 30 minutes with the Lord. First of all, 3 suggestions. First of all, when you go to the Lord, don't open a book and start reading. Ask the Lord to put on your heart anything you did yesterday or anything you did today, if you do it in the evening, that you need to talk to Him about. Maybe you don't think it's a sin, but maybe He does. At least maybe something that you could change in doing. You know, we're in a life, I don't know if you heard this, but there was an old fella that came to prayer meeting every week, and he would say the same testimony when he got up. Every time he came to prayer meeting, he'd stand up and he said, "Praise God, I'm saved, sanctified, and going to heaven." Well, I guess that's pretty good. I don't know, it's a nice testimony. But I think he had one thing wrong. You know what that is? He said he was sanctified. Well, sanctification is not like salvation. Salvation is something that happens to you. But sanctification is something you grow with. You're becoming sanctified from the time you accept Christ until the time that the Lord takes you home. So you need to understand that God is working on you every day. God is working on me every day. And believe me, I got a lot to be worked on too. But the important thing is that we look at our time, our free time, and use it to a way that honors the Lord. And if we're going to have something that we like to do, be sure that it's not going to interfere with family, or it's not going to be something that will not be a good witness to others. That's important. Well, I've kind of run ahead on this in a way, but I don't want to take a lot of the time, and beside that,